right, good day. Welcome to episode 6 of the PM Blend.
When are you going to mess up and not remember the number that we did?
Well, listen.
Was Ann going to always remind you what number this one is?
Well, I studied it.
Okay, all right.
So I wanted to make sure I got this one right.
Good.
But that's what our Pat's for, right?
Okay, that's true.
I mean, all the mistakes I make, he tries to make us look good. It isn't easy.
It's impossible.
It is impossible, but he does do some good work. So, Joe Pfingstler, Mark Powell, episode 6 here of the PM Blend. If you watched episode 5, you'll see the same 3 guests over here on the couch. Although they're sitting in a different order, they're really trying to mess with me a little bit. Yeah, but Tom, Phil, Doug, we're happy to have all 3 of them with us here in episode 6. So welcome, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, you guys have made it when he's only using your first names. He's not introducing it as
well, yeah, I'm just happy this time he remembered my name.
Oh, that's true, Joe.
I almost called you Atlas. But if you recall watching episode, I think it was 3, we had a special guest in. Maybe it wasn't episode 3, but an earlier episode, we had Atlas, which is Tom's golden doodle, and he truly was the star of the show. And we didn't bring him back because he was the star, and Joe and I like to be the stars, so we kept Atlas at home. So, but I think you've heard enough. Let's get into it, huh? Let's talk about advantages of powdered metal versus machining, and we'll talk about some of those different advantages here. Joe?
Well, obviously, anytime we're doing a conversion, you're asking why you'd come to our process. So, one of the natural things is, for us, is just the sheer speed with which we can make a part. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the huge things that you gain out of our process, out of the machine part. But there are a lot of other things that these guys are obviously designed for that bring that other step towards it that the customer likes is cost savings. So
it's oftentimes a big one.
I don't think I ever end a conversation with a customer is how much it's going to cost.
Right.
So that seems to be the end of that whole thing. Is like, give me a price.
Right.
So yeah.
So guys, let's talk about some of those advantages. Joe mentioned speeds that we can do things. We can do parts from a few hundred an hour to what? A couple thousand? 3,000?
1,000 an hour, yeah, in some presses, yeah. But like you alluded to about machining and the advantage of powder metal is being able to mold or compact a near net shaped part. So, you can compact parts with holes already in them instead of having to drill them from a solid blank and just the face details and stuff that sometimes is impossible to machine or it's very expensive to machine, we can do with the tooling. So it makes a big difference.
One of the other things is the material that you would ultimately be throwing away. The chips that you're throwing away. With a near net shaped part, it could be you're not throwing anything away, right? You're making the part fully complete. With machining, you end up with a lot of scrap.
Right. All right. So reduced scrap is an important thing. And I think oftentimes people understand what we do with that. But Tom, what do we do when we do have some scrap and powder metal? Like, let's just talk, green technology is something people talk about a lot. What do we do with the scrap here? Like, how is it reused or is it reused?
Generally, when a part's compacted and we'll have parts we use to warm up the machine and things like that. We will take that scrap and we'll regrind it and use it again, either blend it into some other mix in order to salvage that material.
Okay. All right. So I think one of the advantages is constant repeatability, Joe. Right. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, Phil just alluded to the fact, or Doug, I don't remember which one just said about the net shape side of things. I mean, when we're making a part, and there's some samples sitting in front that we have converted from other processes or developed that may have been tuned for other processes. The speed with which and the repeatability of that is we're going to get hundreds of thousands of strokes out of a tool before we see any really appreciable wear on that. And either it's a dress back, and Doug, you may want to jump in this point at some point here, a dress back or a partial refit of a portion of the tool in order to make those adjustments to get it back to where we want it. And keep in mind, it usually isn't falling out of the tolerance the customer has. It's more so it's causes some issues for us with burring or something like that, where the parting lines are in the component, that we have to make those accommodations and get it back to where we need it. But you're liable to see millions of strokes out of a tool.
Yeah, and I know we're probably going to touch on some of the technological advances in presses, but guys, why don't you just kind of jump in? Now we can do how many layers or how many levels to a part? We can really make some pretty good geometries
with some of the new presses we have. Some of the presses that were here, we just received a new press also too. But the presses that we have, we can mold up to 4 bottoms, 3 to 4 different bottom levels on the bottom and 3 different levels in the top. Okay. Along with the new press that we've just received, we can also do some helicals with it also. So that's stuff we all have to get used to the press and get better at it. But there are so much advantages to that because machining is expensive, no matter how you look at it. The cost of tooling for machining and fixturing and the machines themselves, I understand why industrial machining can be so expensive. So anything you can save, you're saving a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about this in the compaction podcast a while back, but the presses that Phil's alluding to, they have the powder transfer capability which allows you to mold some pretty intricate shapes. So getting to that near net and avoiding machining is with the mold equipment we have today is becoming much more easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, things have changed so much in PM over the years that not only just the materials we have now are different, are better than they used to be. The tooling is better. The tool steels that we use are better. And then also the equipment, the presses that are out there are so much more advanced that you can do so much more things with them that you couldn't do before. That required machining to do that you don't have to do now. So
yeah, and there's a current customer of mine that we're working on a new part with now, who was interested in converting their part from a casting to powdered metal. And the advantage for them was it opened up a machining center in their, on their floor, on their plant floor, where they could move in a new product. So really, there's, one of the other advantages to PM versus machining was they were struggling with staffing. They needed to open floor space. They were able to open up some floor space by converting that part to PM for us, and we were able to do it with limited machining. So there were some advantages there from that standpoint.
You just hit a separate note of what you're just referring to. We're sitting here talking about the advantage of PM over machining, but in your case, the customers had to start out with a casting. It didn't do what it needed to do, so they had to come back and machine it pretty substantially to get it to where they wanted it. And so, a lot of times that's the advantage of the net shape. We can get things much closer in tolerance than a casting process or some of these others. Where a straight out machine part, yes, you can hold very tight tolerances, but you have to take it out of a block of metal of some kind or a piece of bar or whatever, tubing, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And so
in most cases, you're talking about machining and casting, they're machining it to get the finished geometry they want, right? They're not necessarily machining it for tolerances.
Very true.
So your tolerances, it's overkill at that point, right? And they're machining mainly to get the geometry, whereas with PM, we're able to get that geometry in a lot more cases.
Right.
The finished geometry.
And then materials, Tom, I'm sure if we are looking at converting something from, a machine part to a powder metal, maybe there's some advantages for us that we can choose a different material than what they were using to machine that would be maybe even a benefit to their application versus maybe a 4140 steel or something that they were machining it out of.
Yeah, depending on exactly what what property they're looking for, we may be able to tailor that material without maybe the same expense in that case.
Yep.
So
Okay. Joe, you want to talk about surface finish too?
Well, Mark, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, I think that's kind of the last piece of the puzzle here that,
Yeah, the nice thing is a lot of times with machining, the feed rates and the speeds that they run something at will impact that surface finish of the component. Where coming off of our tools tend to be because they're very precise and they're very smooth, tend to give customers a surface finish that meets their needs right out of the blocks without having to do some other operations to clean that up, and or potentially the continuing worry that somebody goes in and makes an adjustment and it's going to change that surface finish. And most of the time we're forming the working areas of the part in the tools themselves, not just in the length segments of it. And so consequently, they know that they have that repeatability over and over and over again. It's always going to look the same way from one part to the millionth part. From that aspect.
Okay. All right. Anything else, guys?
Mark, there's only one other thing I have to bring up is that shirt. Can you get a louder shirt?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And I've got them.
I've been forewarned.
But, yeah, be careful what you wish for, Joe, because it can get really loud in here really quick. Yeah. But I don't have anything as sharp as these cups.
Well, that's true.
I'm telling you what. So, listen, thanks, guys. Appreciate having you again. And thank you for watching our 6th episode here of the PM Blend. And please do follow our socials.